The planet Zalaris was unlike anything Lyra had ever known. Its skies shimmered with pale green clouds that glowed faintly at night, and the mountains were carved not of rock, but of sparkling crystal. Rivers of liquid light ran through the cities, and the people known as Zalarians moved with grace, their skin faintly luminous in the twilight. Lyra had always felt proud to be a scientist among them. She worked in one of the most advanced laboratories in the capital city, studying ways to stabilize the planet's dangerous energy flows. But pride and knowledge could not protect her from mistakes. On that fateful day, she was testing a new energy reactor. The machine was enormous, a network of glowing rods and spinning cores. Lyra knew it was unstable, but her curiosity drove her forward. A slight miscalculation, a momentary distraction, and the reactor began to overload. Sparks flew. The ground shook. Crystal fragments rained from the ceiling, slicing through the air with deadly precision. Lyra tried to shut it down, but the controls were failing. The energy built like a storm, vibrating through the entire laboratory. She knew she had seconds to escape. She ran toward the exit, but a falling beam blocked her path. She stumbled, and the last thing she saw before darkness crept in was a massive flash of light. When she opened her eyes, she was trapped under rubble. Dust filled the air, making her cough. Her arms were pinned and she could not move her legs. Panic rose in her chest, but she forced herself to take slow, steady breaths. She had survived before, she could survive again. Hours passed. The laboratory's emergency signal had been activated, but Zalarian rescue teams hesitated. They were cautious, too cautious for Lyra's taste. The city's council had strict rules about entering unstable zones. They feared further damage or worse, losing more lives. From somewhere far above the planet, a strange object entered Zalaris's orbit. It was small, sleek, and made of metal that reflected the green light of the clouds. Lyra had never seen a human ship before. Humans were rare on Zalaris. Most Zalarians considered them reckless, unpredictable, and dangerous. Yet this ship moved with precision, as if it knew exactly where it was going. Inside the ship, Captain Elias Drake studied the energy readings from the laboratory. Humans were explorers. They had no home planets of glowing crystal or fragile cities, but they had something Zalarians lacked, courage that did not wait for permission. Elias had been tracking the emergency signal for hours, but the readings were unstable. Other humans might have turned away. Elias did not. He landed his ship carefully on a solid plateau near the laboratory. Crystals beneath his feet shimmered with every step, but he moved confidently, adjusting his suit and scanning the area. The wind carried a strange, electric scent. Sparks of residual energy crackled in the air, and he knew the reactor could explode at any moment. But Elias was not afraid. Fear had a way of slowing him down. Inside the ruined laboratory, Lyra heard a sound she did not recognize, the soft crunch of boots on crystal floors. At first she thought it was her imagination. Then a voice called out, "Lyra, can you hear me?" The voice was rough yet calm, with a tone that somehow made her feel safe. Lyra shouted, "Who is it? Stay back. I'm here to help. I'm human. My name is Elias." "I'm going to get you out," he said. Humans. She had heard stories, mostly warnings, but now, facing a life-or-death situation, she had no time for prejudice. Lyra tried to respond, but her voice was weak. Elias moved closer, scanning the rubble. "I see you." "Don't worry, I'll lift this beam. Can you move your arms at all?" She shook her head. "Not much. Please hurry." Elias assessed the situation quickly. His human muscles and tools, though simple compared to Zalarian tech, were strong and effective. He pulled a small device from his belt, pressed a few buttons, and a compact energy field gently lifted the debris. Lyra felt the weight on her chest lighten. She gasped and squeezed her eyes shut, feeling a mix of fear and hope. "Almost there, hold on," Elias said, straining against the heavy rubble. Crystals cracked under the pressure, but the field held. Slowly, painfully, he lifted the last beam enough for her to crawl free. She fell to the floor, coughing but alive. Elias crouched beside her. "Can you stand?" he asked. "I think so," she whispered. Her legs were numb, but the adrenaline helped. With his steady hands, Elias guided her to the exit. The wind outside was electric, charged with leftover energy from the reactor. Sparks danced across the crystals, and the night sky glowed ominously. "Stay close to me," Elias said. "We need to get to safe ground before the reactor fully collapses." Lyra followed, amazed at his calm. She had expected humans to be chaotic, wild, and reckless. Elias was all of that, perhaps, but also precise, brave, and clever in ways she had never imagined. As they moved, a tremor shook the ground. Crystals splintered, sending shards flying. Elias pulled her down just in time. A large chunk of the ceiling collapsed where she had been moments before. She realized she had been saved by more than strength. It was his awareness, his instinct, his unwillingness to give up. Once they reached the plateau, Elias activated a small beacon. It sent a signal to his ship, guiding them to safety. Lyra looked at him, still catching her breath. Why risk your life for me?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Because it's the right thing to do, no other reason." Lyra wanted to argue, to say humans were unpredictable, but she could not. She had seen the truth with her own eyes. He had come without hesitation, without expectation of reward, simply to save her. Her mind raced with questions about humans, about this bravery she had underestimated. In the distance, the reactor exploded in a wave of green and white light. The shockwave rattled the plateau and crystals fell like rain. Lyra flinched, but Elias held her steady. "You're safe now, that's what matters," he said. Lyra finally allowed herself to rest, leaning on him as they watched the destruction from a distance. Her chest ached, not just from fear, but from admiration. She realized something profound: humans were different. Their strength was not in technology or skill alone, but in choices, courage, and the will to act when others hesitated. Hours later, when the night was calmer and the energy flows stabilized, Elias led Lyra back to his ship. She walked slowly, her body weak but her mind alive with wonder. She glanced at him. I cannot thank you enough," she said. "You don't need to," he replied. "Just live, tell your people that humans can help, not harm." The journey back to the city was quiet. Lyra gazed out of the ship's window, looking at the glowing rivers of light, the crystal towers, and the vast skies. She had seen humans in stories, but meeting one, being saved by one, changed everything she thought she knew. For the first time, she imagined a world where humans and Xylarians could work together, a world where courage and compassion were recognized across species. And though she did not yet know how, she felt that her life, and perhaps her planet, would never be the same again. As the city came into view, glowing softly in the distance, Lyra looked at Elias and whispered a word that carried her gratitude, awe, and hope all at once. Elias smiled, sensing that this was only the beginning of a story far bigger than either of them. The city of Xylaris was a wonder to behold. Even after the night of disaster, the towers of crystal gleamed under the pale green sky, and the rivers of liquid light reflected the stars like streams of glowing diamonds. Yet beneath the beauty, tension lingered. Lyra's rescue had become the talk of the city. Rumors of a human who dared to save a Xylarian swirled through the streets. Some whispered with admiration, others with suspicion. Lyra returned to her laboratory with Elias at her side. The council had sent emissaries, their faces guarded, their questions sharp. They demanded to know how she had survived, who the human was, and why he had come. Lyra's mind was still filled with relief and wonder, but also with a growing realization. What she had witnessed was not just bravery, it was a glimpse of something her people had long ignored. "I must speak to him," she told the emissaries firmly. "He is not a threat, he is the reason I am alive." The council murmured among themselves. Humans were unpredictable, impulsive, and sometimes violent. Yet here was proof that one human had acted with reason, skill, and compassion. Against their better judgment, they allowed Elias to enter the council chambers. Elias stood tall, his presence calm but unyielding. His uniform was simple, his movements confident. The Xylarians studied him like one might study a wild animal, curious, cautious, and unsure. Lyra stepped forward. "This is Elias," she said, her voice steady despite the lingering fear from her ordeal. "He saved my life, and I owe him everything." One of the council elders, a tall Xylarian with skin like polished quartz, leaned forward. "He, a human, saved one of our finest scientists? How is this possible? Humans are reckless, they cannot be trusted." Lyra met his gaze. "I know what you have heard, I know your fears. But you must see the truth." Elias did not act recklessly. He acted with courage, with thought, and with care. "If we had waited for our rules to allow a rescue, I would not be here. He is not just a human. He is proof that humans are capable of greatness." The council remained silent, weighing her words. Elias finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "I do not want recognition, I do not want reward. I came because someone needed help, that is all. You call it courage, I call it choice. Anyone would have done the same." Lyra's heart lifted. She had expected arguments, skepticism, maybe even outright hostility, but here was a human who spoke not with arrogance but with humility. Her admiration grew. She realized that humans were more than their flaws. They were defined by their willingness to act, to take responsibility when it mattered most. The elder's voice broke the silence. If what you say is true, if humans can act with such integrity, then perhaps we have underestimated them. Perhaps we have been too cautious, too fearful. Lyra nodded. You have, and I cannot say this lightly. Elias has shown us that cooperation is possible. That we are not alone in the universe, that bravery and compassion are not limited to Xylarians. Another council member, younger and more open-minded, leaned forward. And what of the danger? Your reactor, the disaster, it could have destroyed the city. If humans are involved, what guarantees do we have? Elias responded without hesitation. You will not find guarantees anywhere, but you will find choice. I chose to act. That choice saved a life. It is not technology or strength alone that matters. It is what we decide to do with what we have. Humans, Xylarians, all beings, we are measured by our actions. A quiet hum filled the chamber. The council exchanged glances. Lyra watched Elias carefully. She could feel the shift in the room, the first seeds of change taking root. She had seen humans through the lens of her people's fears, but now she saw them through their actions, through courage and compassion. And she understood that her world might never be the same again. After the council meeting, Elias and Lyra walked through the city streets. The aftermath of the reactor accident was still visible. Some crystal towers were damaged, and small fires flickered where energy had leaked. Xylarians moved with precision, repairing the damage, but their eyes often lingered on Elias. Do they always look at humans like that? Elias asked, tilting his head with a small smile. Like what? Lyra asked. With caution, curiosity, wonder, some seem afraid, others hopeful. Do they always see danger in the unknown? Lyra laughed softly. We have lived so long in our cities with our rules and our technology, we fear what we do not understand. You have shown us something different, Elias, something we did not expect. He nodded. That is how humans live, I think. We do not always understand, but we act anyway. We learn, we adapt, and sometimes we surprise even ourselves. Lyra looked at him, and for a moment the world around them faded. She saw not just a human, but a symbol of a new possibility, one that bridged fear and understanding, species and planet. The next day, Lyra returned to her laboratory. She needed to rebuild, to study, and to understand what had happened. But she was no longer alone in her thoughts. Elias remained, offering guidance and sharing ideas from his travels across countless worlds. Together, they analyzed the reactor's failure, comparing Xylarian methods with human problem-solving. Lyra found herself learning from him and teaching him in return. Their collaboration became a dance of knowledge and trust, blending intuition and logic. As they worked, Lyra began to consider the larger implications. If humans could act with such integrity, what might they achieve with her people's technology? What new discoveries could arise from collaboration instead of fear? The questions stirred excitement in her chest. She realized that her planet's future might be brighter than she had ever imagined. But not all were ready to embrace change. Some Xylarians watched with suspicion, whispering about the dangers of humans and the recklessness of trusting outsiders. Lyra knew that shifting centuries of caution would take time. Yet she felt a quiet determination. She would speak of Elias' actions, share the lessons he had brought, and perhaps ignite a movement that could transform her world. One evening, Lyra and Elias stood on a high terrace overlooking the city. The rivers of light flowed like molten silver beneath them, and the sky shimmered with stars. Lyra felt a surge of gratitude and awe. You know, she said quietly, when I first saw you, I never imagined this connection. I thought humans were unpredictable, reckless, dangerous. But you have shown me that we were wrong, that bravery, kindness, and choice are what matter. Elias looked at her, his expression unreadable but warm. And you have shown me that knowledge, caution, and wisdom are just as important. We are stronger together than apart. Lyra smiled. She realized that her words, if shared with the council and her people, could change everything. It was not just about her survival, but about a new perspective, a new era. She turned to Elias and said something she had not yet spoken aloud, words that carried both gratitude and a spark of hope. Humans, perhaps you are exactly what we needed. Elias chuckled softly. And perhaps Xylarians are exactly what we needed too. As the night deepened, Lyra felt a sense of purpose she had never known. She would speak to the council again, tell them what she had seen, and advocate for cooperation with humans. She knew that not everyone would agree immediately, but she also knew that change always began with one choice, one voice, one act of courage. The following weeks were filled with debates, planning, and careful negotiations. Lyra presented her case repeatedly, using Elia's actions as evidence of humanity's potential. She spoke with scientists, engineers, council members, and even the ordinary citizens of Xylaris. Slowly, attitudes began to shift. Curiosity replaced fear. Hesitation turned into interest. People began to ask questions not about what humans might destroy, but what humans could create alongside them. Elias stayed close to Lyra, guiding discussions and offering insight into human ways. He never pushed, never demanded trust. He simply acted with the quiet confidence that had saved Lyra in the first place. His presence became a living example of the values Lyra wanted to share: courage, compassion, and choice. One evening, after another long meeting, Lyra returned to her laboratory. She stood before the reactor, now stable and partially repaired, and thought of the events that had brought her here. The memory of being trapped, the panic, and the moment Elias had reached her all came flooding back. She felt a mix of relief, awe, and determination. Her people were beginning to see what she had always known. Humans were more than stories, more than warnings. They were capable of greatness. And with courage, intelligence, and collaboration, humans and Xylarians together could achieve things neither could accomplish alone. For Lyra, the revelation was clear. Survival was only the beginning. The real journey had just begun. And at the center of it, standing beside her, was Elias, the human who had not only saved her life, but also opened her eyes to a universe of possibilities. The city of Xylaris had begun to change. The memory of the reactor disaster was still fresh, but so was the story of Elias, the human who had saved Lyra. His courage and selflessness had sparked a new wave of thought across the city. Some Xylarians remained skeptical, their whispers cautious and wary. Yet more were curious, even excited to see what collaboration with humans might bring. Lyra stood in her laboratory, reviewing notes and schematics with Elias by her side. The reactor, now fully repaired, glowed gently, its energy balanced and stable. It had been a challenge to rebuild after the accident, but together they had not only repaired it, they had improved it. Lyra marveled at how human ideas, combined with Xylarian technology, could create something neither species could achieve alone. "This is incredible," she said softly. "Your approach to problem-solving, it's different from ours. It's practical but creative. I never imagined combining our methods like this could work." Elias smiled, brushing his hand across the glowing control panel. "Humans have learned to adapt, Lyra. We often don't have the luxury of perfection, so we find solutions that work. Sometimes we fail, but each failure teaches us something new. It seems your people have perfected that balance between knowledge and caution. Together, we make a strong team." Their collaboration had not gone unnoticed. Citizens and council members visited the lab, curious to see the results of human-Xylarian teamwork. Children, fascinated by Elias, followed him around, asking questions about his travels, his ship, and his planet. Lyra noticed that even the skeptics seemed intrigued, their rigid expressions softening with interest. One day, the council called Lyra and Elias to a formal meeting. The chamber was filled with dignitaries, scientists, and observers from across Xylaris. The topic: whether humans and Xylarians could begin an official alliance, sharing knowledge, resources, and exploration efforts. Lyra spoke first, her voice steady and confident. "We have seen the truth. Humans are not the reckless creatures we believed. Elias has shown us courage, empathy, and intelligence. We have worked together and the results speak for themselves. This alliance is not just possible, it is necessary for our future." A council elder, still cautious but clearly impressed, spoke next. "Your words are persuasive, Lyra. We have feared humans for centuries, but your testimony is compelling. You have experienced their potential firsthand." Elias stepped forward. "I do not seek power or control. I ask only that we work together, share knowledge, help each other, and explore the universe as allies. Humans have much to learn from Xylarians, and I believe you have much to learn from us as well. Cooperation can make both our worlds stronger, safer, and wiser." There was a long silence. Then, slowly, members of the council nodded. The decision was made. The first formal alliance between humans and Xylarians would begin. Lyra felt a thrill of excitement and relief. This was more than a political move. It was a step toward unity, understanding, and growth for two very different civilizations. In the weeks that followed, humans and Xylarians worked side by side. Human engineers introduced new techniques for energy management, construction, and space travel. Xylarians shared their advanced crystal technology, knowledge of energy stabilization, and mastery of communication across vast distances. The results were extraordinary. Crystals that once sparked uncontrollably were now steady and bright. Rivers of liquid light flowed smoothly, powering the city and its new expansion projects. Lyra and Elias became symbols of this new era. Citizens saw them as a team, proof that collaboration could overcome fear and suspicion. Children drew pictures of humans and Xylarians working together, and artists painted murals depicting the rescue that had started it all. Lyra often watched these works, feeling pride and hope. She realized that her life and her planet would never be the same again. Yet even in times of progress, challenges remained. Some Xylarians continued to resist change, wary of trusting humans fully. There were small accidents, misunderstandings, and debates over priorities. Lyra and Elias faced each challenge with patience, listening carefully, explaining clearly, and finding compromise. They learned that building trust took time, but it was always worth the effort. One evening, after a long day of meetings and demonstrations, Lyra and Elias stood on the edge of the city, overlooking the glowing rivers and crystal towers. The stars reflected in the liquid light, and the wind carried a gentle hum from the energy flowing below. "I never imagined this could happen," Lyra said softly. "Humans and Xylarians working together, sharing knowledge, exploring the stars, it feels impossible." Elias turned to her, his expression serious but kind. "Nothing is impossible when people choose to act. Bravery, compassion, and understanding, those are the things that change worlds, Lyra. Not fear, not rules, not perfection. Action does." Lyra smiled, feeling the weight of his words. She thought back to the moment he had reached her in the laboratory, lifting the rubble that pinned her down. That single act of courage had started everything: the rescue, the alliance, the hope for a brighter future. "You've shown us so much," she said. "Not just humans, but what it means to act with courage, to risk for others, to trust even when it is difficult." Elias nodded. "And you've shown me the power of knowledge, patience, and wisdom. You've taught me that strength is not just physical, but also understanding and care." As they stood together, the city below them seemed to shine brighter than ever. Lyra knew that this was only the beginning. The alliance would grow, bringing new discoveries, adventures, and challenges. Together, humans and Xylarians could explore distant worlds, stabilize dangerous energies, and build a future that neither species could achieve alone. Months passed. The collaboration expanded beyond the city. Human scientists and explorers arrived, bringing new technologies, tools, and ideas. Xylarians shared their advanced energy systems and crystal structures. Together, they designed new ships capable of traveling through hazardous energy storms, new habitats that could sustain life on distant planets, and new communication systems that connected worlds in real time. Lyra worked tirelessly, often alongside Elias, testing new systems and guiding teams of humans and Xylarians. She felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. Every day brought new challenges, but also new successes. The city thrived. Citizens walked freely between human and Xylarian zones, exchanging ideas, learning from one another, and forming friendships that crossed species. One day, Lyra stood before a group of young Xylarian scientists and humans. She told them the story of her rescue, carefully explaining every detail, every choice, every moment of courage that had made it possible. The room was silent, filled with awe and inspiration. "And so," Lyra concluded, "we must remember that bravery and compassion are not limited to any one species. They exist in all of us. The future depends on the choices we make, the risks we take, and the courage we show when it matters most. Humans, Xylarians, together we are stronger than we have ever been." The students nodded, their eyes shining. They understood the lesson, and more importantly, they felt hope. The story of Elias' rescue had become more than a tale of survival. It had become a legend of cooperation, courage, and possibility. As the city celebrated its renewed strength, Lyra and Elias stood once again on the terrace overlooking the glowing rivers. The wind carried the hum of energy and life, and the stars stretched endlessly above. Lyra turned to Elias, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "When I first saw you, I never imagined that one human could change everything," she said. "But you did. Not just for me, but for my people, for our city, for the future. What you did and what you continue to do has changed everything." Elias smiled, his eyes reflecting the light of the city below. "And you, Lyra, have shown that one choice, one act of courage can spark hope across worlds. Together, we have started something far bigger than ourselves. The story is just beginning." Below them, the city glowed brighter than ever, a symbol of unity, hope, and the limitless potential of two civilizations working together. Lyra knew that challenges would come, that obstacles would arise, but she also knew this. Humans and Zalarians had learned to trust one another, to act together, and to create a future built on courage, compassion, and understanding. The alliance had begun. And with it, a new era for Zalaris, and perhaps the galaxy was born.